Are you feeling alone and empty lately?
Are you losing hope?
Are you tired because of the negative things happening around you?
Have you lost your faith in God?
Are you scared for your future?
This is the tale of a miracle. If you don't know what a miracle is, you will know at the end. Remember that only God can do miracles, and all of us can be an instrument of God's miracles.
Jesus had sent 12 disciples into the fields, granting them the authority to cure the sick and spread the gospel of God's love. As the disciples returned to Jesus, they told him of all the people they had spoken to and cured. They were all excited to share their stories to Jesus.
The concern was that people followed the apostles to find Jesus. They had seen his miracles and wished to see more. Yet, Jesus knew the disciples needed to speak to him. They had not yet had a chance to eat, so he asked them to come with him and find a nice spot to talk and get some rest.
Then they sailed away in a boat by themselves to a peaceful spot. However, several people saw them leave and recognized them, so they pursued them on land. Since the boat Jesus and the disciples were in was delayed by the wind, the people landed on the other side of the shore before them.
When Jesus and his disciples came, they were struck by the scale of the crowd. Since he knew they wanted a teacher and someone to believe in, Jesus felt compassion for them. He knew the disciples would understand, so he started teaching the large crowd.
It was getting late in the day, and no one had eaten supper yet. The disciples approached Jesus and said, "There is no food nearby, and it's getting late. Perhaps we can send the people away so they can go to the nearby towns and get some food. You give them something to eat." The disciples misunderstood Jesus and said, "We can't feed all these people. We'd have to labor for almost a year to pay for all the bread."
One of the disciples, Andrew, noticed a small boy walking by with a small lunch. While the disciples were talking to Jesus, he stopped and asked about the boy's lunch. He dashed over to the disciples who were chatting with Jesus and said, "Here's a boy with 5 small loaves of bread and 2 small fish. But how far will they go among so many people?" Jesus smiled and said, "Ask everyone to sit down."
There was plenty of grass to sit on, so all 5,000 of them were seated. After all had taken their seat, Jesus took the loaves of bread and praised God. The disciples then passed the bread around, allowing everyone to take as much as they could. He also did the exact thing with the fish.
Remember that these were only 5 small loaves of bread and 2 small fish, enough to feed a boy. There were 5,000 people consuming this boy's tiny lunch, and they were allowed to eat as much as they liked. Your church or school currently has more than 5,000 members. That's a lot of people.
After all had eaten, Jesus instructed the disciples to collect any leftover food so that nothing would go to waste. They counted the baskets of food after they had collected them all from the little boy's small lunch. 12 baskets were still full of bread and fish.
His small lunch probably barely filled one of the baskets before Jesus touched it, and that is a miracle. After the people realized what had happened, they said to each other, "This must be an important person sent from God." He was much more than that.
Miracles are often seen as signs by the gospel writers to explain what sort of God Christians believes in and how Jesus shows that. This story shows that Jesus can supply the basic needs we have. In John's version of the story, Jesus says that I am the bread of life. The miracle shows Christian the importance of looking to God for the support we need in difficult times. He knows what we need and is willing and able to help us. Many Christians believe that sometimes God meets with a direct miracle, but Christians also see this as a way to have them think about how they should live and give. The little boy didn't have much but gave what he had, and Jesus did amazing things with it. For Christians, it's a lesson that we should be prepared to give ourselves, even if it costs us a lot, and let God use us to help others.
This story reflects on our current condition, a world in the grip of a pandemic wherein everyone is suffering. As Jesus suffers hunger with his disciples and the 5,000 people following him, he unselfishly chose to feed every one of them and considered first the problem that the 5,000 men are experiencing rather than his own problem. He uses his capacity to help others unconditionally by performing a miracle. Although only God can perform miracles, we can still help many people with our capabilities. As a follower of Christ, we should be unselfish and strive to do good on others. We should perceive the pandemic not as a hindrance, but rather as an opportunity to assist those in need.
The story of Jesus feeding the 5,000 is one of the most inspiring stories in the Bible. It is about Jesus' miracle feeding 5,000 men with just 5 loaves of bread and 2 fishes. The story and our theme, Hopefulness and Goodness Amidst Pandemic, is connected because just as what stated in the story, and with our current situation with COVID right now, all we need to do is to have faith in the Lord. For faith is something that we can hold on to. It is believing even in the most impossible things. For if we believe, we do not lose hope. If we believe that everything happening around us is nothing compared to our Lord, we will never falter. We should always remember that nothing we face here on earth is too big for God, and that He surpassed expectations, that our Lord is ultimate. We just need to believe and pray and put our trust in Him.
Everyone has their problems, but that should not stop us from helping other people with their difficulties. Helping is great because it's a good deed and it builds a strong connection with people we serve that will create a peaceful community. Helping is also a way of sharing our blessings with our neighbors. We can show this act in simple ways. It can be big or small. So let's not hesitate to give what we can.
Faith is usually tested, especially when being in a rough situation. We all have heard the saying, God won't put you into that situation unless He knows that you won't overcome it, which is true. God sometimes puts us into trials for us to learn from an experience. Going through hardship doesn't mean that God doesn't listen. It doesn't mean that He wants us to suffer. It is actually the other way around, for He chose you to be guided by Him. Remember that the Lord is near to the brokenhearted and weak. We need to trust God as everything happens for a reason, especially in His will. Who knows that it may be a blessing in disguise?
And now, we ask,
How about you?
Do you still want to continue?
To do good for others and be a saint in your own little ways.